Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us once again on the Deer Talk Now podcast. I am Dan Schmidt. We have had such a great start to the new podcast format for this year, and we've had so many good guests. I'm really happy to not only be bringing on true outdoors people, but a good cross-section of the outdoors community. Today we have a special guest. Her name is Skye Goode. I don't know if you're on social media, but if you are, you've probably seen her on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Her YouTube page is fascinating. Skye, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Skye, I know you're super busy, and I really want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to spend with us. Could you give the listeners just a short snapshot of where you come from? I know that you have a real job that you work during the days, and you do a lot of this outdoor stuff on the side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I work for my county mental health clinic during the day. I'm a case manager, so I help people with their addictions and mental health stuff in my real job.
Wow.
But then I'm a mom of two boys, and I run the social media for the Wisconsin Trappers Association, and then I sew for hats in all my downtime. So those are kind of my little things that I do.
And we do see that. I see it all the time. You're posting some pretty cool photos of all the different critters that you're catching, like I don't know if it's bobcat or beaver or whatever you happen to have. Is that very time intensive on those projects that you're doing?
Yeah, it does. It takes me a few weeks to sew one hat. I'm not the type of person to sit still. Like even now, I wish I was like out walking. So at night, like when you would sit on the couch watching TV, that's when I sew, because I can't just sit there and watch TV. So it's like a couple hours every night that I would normally be just watching TV. I sew.
That's pretty cool. And I want to reiterate to people who might not be familiar with you, she is not a pretend outdoors person. If you see some of these photos, some of the things that she's doing, she's putting up loads of fox, beavers, coyotes, bobcats, all this stuff that you're catching. How did you get into trapping? I would say is probably your forte, or that's what we see. How did you get into trapping specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, I come from a outdoorsy family. My grandpa, he was a vegetable farmer, and on the winter he would trap muskrat, coon, and it was a good part of his income back then, in the 70s. So it wasn't a foreign thing. But I got into trapping actually because of bow hunting. So years ago, when I was going to scout in Menominee, I bow hunted a little area down in that Downsville area, and I shot a buck at night, and it was like a liver shot, and I went back in the morning to retrieve them, and it was only like 60 yards away, but I kicked some coyotes off, and when I recovered them, all the back hams were gone. And so I always give my little spiel when I'm at trapping classes that I wanted revenge on these coyotes. Like that's what got me into trapping. So most people start out on muskrats or something easy, but I started off on coyotes purely out of revenge because I was a deer hunter. And it was such an addiction to have the thrill of the harvest nearly every morning when you catch something, that over the years I just started to choose trapping over every other outdoor sport in the fall. So
that's awesome. And I have to give you credit, and you don't know this, but you taught me how to catch weasels because yes. So I just bought an old farm house here last year, and I'm getting all started. Farmer Dan, they call me. I've got some rabbits and some chickens, and in my past life I had raised laying hens, and I know that weasels can be pretty bad on them. I've never dealt with weasels, so I had my trail cameras out there. Lo and behold, I get a ermine weasel right in the middle of December, and I'm like, oh man, I can't have. I know they will kill all the chickens. So then I'm looking around. Here I find one of your posts where you took an old, actually not an old, you took an ammo box, drilled a hole into it. So then here I was going to Fleet Farm in Stevens Point. I'm looking for ammo boxes. I'm looking for rat traps with the big paddles. I couldn't find any of those. Anyways, long story short, I caught 3 weasels in a month.
Wow, way to go.
Yep, I just caught a raccoon this morning. So I'm up to, I think, 11 predators I've taken out. So I'm saving the turkey population one predator at a time. But I understand what you're saying. It becomes an addiction. But you started... From what I understand, weasels are not the hardest thing to trap. I found coyotes. I can't even come. I know there's coyotes. I hear them every night. How on earth did you start? That's basically putting a kid in Yankee Stadium and saying, "Here, kid, hit one out." I mean,
Yeah.
catching a coyote right out of the box.
Well, my first year, that year of revenge, I shot that deer a week before gun season, so like mid-November. So by the time I got my trapper certification, we're in like January. So it's like the toughest time to just start trapping. So I didn't catch anything that first month of Jan. But then I got into the Wisconsin Trappers Association that summer, and I went to the convention in Marshfield in September. So that next fall, I caught like 16. But I was
Wow.
up in Barron County. I had moved to Barron County by then, which is like all dairy farms and egg fields. So all the turkey farms up there too. So like the coyotes were prolific all over. It was really easy. So I kind of got a good confidence boost by trapping up there. And so when I moved back to Neilsville, I already had a lot of coyotes under my belt. Had I started in my public land Clark County forest zone, I probably would have been discouraged. So I did have that advantage to, start trapping in a pretty easy area.
So okay, you're a deer hunter first. You're a trapper second. What? And I know this is a question you probably get a lot. What is the reaction that you get, especially if you're a caseworker and you're dealing with the public and somebody finds out, oh, she's a trapper? I mean, what are some of the comments that you get from maybe non-hunters or everyday people?
Well, so on the internet is where all the negative comments come from. In real life, though, usually when it's adults, it's either that's so cool, I always want to try that. My dad was a trapper, my grandpa was a trapper, like all those comments. And then I work a lot with kids, and during the fall, winter months, there's always because I run my line before work, and so whatever I catch during the day is in the back of my truck still. I never have time to like. So I mean, I've picked up kids for different things that I do for work, and they say, "What'd you catch today?" And I show them, and they get to see it, and it's always really cool. So in real life, it's like I could probably count on one hand in my entire lifetime the negative feedback I've gotten. It's always just online.
In person. So you're not
Yeah.
you're not driving into the grocery store and somebody freaking out because you got a bunch of dead coyotes in the back of the pickup truck.
No, and maybe I'm in the boonies here, but everybody is so pro hound hunting, pro hunting, pro trapping in my area. I mean, I don't really go to Milwaukee or Chicago or anywhere or Madison, so I mean maybe it'd be different, but in central Wisconsin, you're a hero for trapping coyotes,
Which
so
you
it's always received.
absolutely, and that's I would say that would extend to just about anything. Raccoons and fox and everything else, because as the homesteading boom continues, people are going to have to understand that trapping is necessary. Which brings me to my next question: is trapping necessary? I know your answer, but is trapping necessary, and why would you be a trapper right now in 2022?
Yeah, I think people forget that we're part of the ecosystem. So one of the feedback you hear from antis is that, let nature take its course, or these predators have a role, or all these things, but they forget that humans are part of that balance. So, I mean, we can't just pretend like we're living in a different bubble and the wildlife is somewhere else. We're in there too. So you talk about raising chickens, raising livestock. We're deer hunters. We're part of the predator chain, So I think if people kind of forget that we're not different than any other predator, we want to eat too and protect ours. And so that's really important. But I know people always go after coyotes for deer, but like you said, in one night, a possum, a skunk, a fox, a coon, they can raid one or two turkey nests in one night. They can make a meal of that. And then you forget about things like turtles, turtle eggs. I mean, I don't know how any turtles survive in our state, because I swear every turtle nest gets dug up,
Wow.
and it's little things like that you don't think of, like, oh yeah, like that's fur bears are doing that, so it kind of all correlates, but remembering that we're part of that chain is important.
What would you say, in your opinion, in your experience, which predator or predators are the worst on other game populations?
Well, in my area, I have a lot of wolves, but I don't maybe I shouldn't even say the W word. It's too controversial.
Oh, we're going to talk about that, so you can bring that up.
Well, in my opinion, I don't see the depredation of wolves. The deer here are so smart at evading. That's why they're so hard to hunt, because we're in wolf country. So I don't often see wolf kills. I see a lot of wolf scavenging, and wolves do a lot on beaver. But as far as wolf kills, I don't think it's as high as people think, at least in my area. Just because the deer are, the deer are in town now, and the deer are in your yard now because of the wolves. The bobcats, I think, are really underrated. A 40-pound bobcat will wait in a cornfield and ambush fawns easily, but of course the fawns and all that. But honestly, if you start from the beginning, like eggs and nesting and that kind of stuff, I think coon do a lot more damage to our grouse, duck, turkey populations than people even think of. They think of the African-like animals like pouncing like coyotes and bobcat, but you forget that a nest of turkeys can be decimated in one night. So I think that's really underrated.
Yeah, that's a great point, because in coons too, they'll have what, I don't know, 6, 8 of them. I mean, it's basically like taking a bucket of sand out of the beach, because I know that from in the past years, I've just always had to have traps out on my property, always, constantly. I know you do a lot of work with the state, especially the trapping education programs. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing there, Skye.
Sure. Well, I started out just doing regular trapper ed classes and helping out. Most recent, we put together like a women's trapping camp because of the R3. We wanted to get minorities into the outdoors, so the women's group was kind of important. So we started that. This will be our second year doing it. And so we just try to put out as many classes as possible. It's really hard. There's, a high need for trapper education, but all the instructors are volunteer, and most of them are in retirement age, and we're not filling their shoes. So it's really getting hard to find people that want to volunteer their time. But it's so important, or we just won't have people enjoying trapping. Imagine if there were no hunter safety classes and we couldn't recruit any hunters. It kind of all falls in. So just constantly trying to find new instructors for that.
How's the reception been on that women's camp?
Oh, it's probably like, if I was writing a resume of my proudest moments, that's the women's trap camp is really up there.
Wow.
Last year, it filled in like 48 hours. Once we posted it, we had 30 people sign up. And this year we just put it out, and I think it's going to be the same. We just did a presentation at the Wisconsin Trappers Association spring banquet. It was in Wausau last weekend, and we were the keynote speakers. Me, Jody, Bridget, and Jenna, just the girls that have planned it. And it was really, really received, because it wasn't, how do I say the PC phrase? Like it wasn't like a prissy type of, we were down in the mud. They were setting traps. It was like dirty, environment, and they all learned, like they left the camp knowing everything you should need to know about trapping. And nearly all the women ran their own solo lines this winter, like without boyfriends, without husbands, without dads, like they did it themselves. And that's kind of the biggest success from, showing what they learned. So it was pretty cool. I think we're going to keep doing it every year.
So on that point that you make right there, making the sets by yourself, I've seen your videos. I've seen you, I don't know if I have the stones to do it. I've seen you releasing wolves out of traps, releasing bobcats out of traps, releasing a badger out of a trap. How on earth do you work up the courage to do that? And then what does that teach you as an outdoors person?
Yeah, so I've always ran my own trap line. I haven't had a brother or a husband or anybody to help me. So I'll never forget the first non-target that I caught was maybe not the first, but the first time I asked for help was a black bear that it was a young one. He didn't know he should be hibernating, and he got caught in one of my coyote traps. And I called the local warden, and they said it much nicer, but basically said, that's your problem. Like, you set the trap, you need, it's your responsibility. I did have a warden that was off duty come help me because I had no idea, but they kind of said, if you're going to be out here trapping, you need to be prepared for, anything. And so I kind of took that to heart. And you just it's one of those things where it's like, well, who else is going to do it? Like if I have a wolf here in my trap, who might there's not someone on call just waiting for you to have them come help you. You just got to do it yourself. And so a lot of trial and error using catch poles and different things. And I finally came up with a release shield that I use. It just takes me a few seconds to let them go. And it's the safest option. But it's just one of those things you have to do it because nobody else is going to. So I talk about that a lot in Trappers Ed classes. If you're going to set the trap, you have the responsibility of taking anything that gets in that trap out, whether it's dispatched or alive. So.
Have you ever had a situation go bad on you?
I have a scar on my finger from a bobcat. My own stupidity. I went to go take a picture of him and I forgot he was on a drag. So when they're anchored, they're just right there in the ground, but a drag is 8 foot of chain and I forgot he was on a drag and I went right up to him with my phone to take a picture and he lunged and he slapped that phone out of my hand and I got a claw right through my finger. Other than that, I haven't had anything. I take my time and I really make sure my footing's there and I let the animal calm down. I don't just go charging at them. I take a lot of time to let them calm back down, and that's kind of the key to it.
That's a friend of mine actually. When I was watching your badger video, he's got the scars on his neck to prove it. He had it's kind of the same thing. When he released the badger, it basically just lunged at him and it just missed him. It caught him right in the neck. But you have to be careful. And I can tell in your videos that you are very trained at it because you are taking precautions. Let's talk about that because one of your most popular videos is educational, and it's showing exactly how a foothold trap works. Because I know that what you probably get, especially on social media and online, is, oh my God, these animals are suffering. It's in that trap. It's got his foot in that trap. Explain the realities of a foothold trap and how that actually works.
Yeah, so when I first got into trapping, the vernacular was don't ever show your incidentals or your non-targets. So those animals I'm releasing, don't ever talk about it. And I started to notice on the internet that if you don't talk about it, the antis will come up with their own propaganda, right? And so those phrases like chew their leg off or break bones and I was like, this isn't how our traps work. Why aren't we talking more about how modern day, like this isn't the 1800s. Like we have great traps now that are humane. So I kind of went against the grain and just started putting out those release videos. And a lot of people thought that I shouldn't be, but my stance was I'm showing that these traps are completely harmless. I mean, they're humane. And so I started doing that. And then I got the feedback about how it was, edited or whatever. I didn't show. So then I started resetting the traps and put my hand in them. And I did a lot of hand and trap videos just to show that these are the real traps that I'm using. The traps I use, they have a gap, offset jaws. So they have a little gap so that the jaws, it can't ever be metal and metal. There's a nice little gap in there. So the circulation of the animal's foot is never cut off. So there's always blood flow. So they have feeling and everything, which means that they won't pull too hard. It's like a really tight pair of handcuffs. I also have laminations on the jaws, which just increases the surface area. So it never cuts skin, because if the jaws were sharp, it would cut skin. So mine are really wide and they don't. And then we have a lot of swivels too. So if you didn't swivel and the animal turned, obviously it would break the leg. But we have 3 or 4 swivels in our chains so that they can just be turning and there's no getting caught up in debris or anything. And then finally shock springs. So we have these big springs on there. So when the animal pulls, if we didn't have that, they could dislocate a shoulder or a ligament or something. But the shock springs absorb all the energy. So all those things combined, I would feel comfortable. My dog got, he doesn't anymore, he's learned, but in the beginning he would get caught in traps all the time. I have no worry about anybody's dog getting caught in any of my traps. So
that's very important. Thank you for that. I would recommend anybody, even if you're not a trapper, to find some of these videos and share them, because Skye is really carrying the flag to help educate, not only if you're going to be a trapper, but if you're not a trapper, that you understand what she just explained there in the last 2 minutes is extremely important, because if you look at the manufacturers, and I'm not even going to name names, we have the Trapper magazine here, and that's full disclosure, but these manufacturers, they're in business to stay in business, and they've been in business for decades, and they're making traps with swivels. They're making traps with those shock absorbing springs, and it's about a trapper is just as much of a conservationist, and probably more, I would say, than most of the hunters in the United States. And I'm not going to pit people against each other. I'm just saying that education is key, and what Skye is doing here is very important. Man. Okay, we're going to take a quick break to thank one of our sponsors. Today's episode of Deer Talk Now podcast is brought to you by Muddy Outdoors and the new Merge cellular trail camera. Featuring simple, easy-to-use cellular activation with quick scan QR setup, the Merge Cell Cam features 26 megapixels, updated ultra-fast trigger speeds, 4 image resolutions, 80-foot detection and IR range, burst mode, and an SD card slot that takes up to 32 gigabyte cards. It operates on 8 AA batteries and has an external power jack for solar battery pack that's sold separately. Check them out at your local sporting goods retailer or visit gomuddy.com. Skye, what annoys you the most in that circle, in the trapping circle, on social media and online?
How much time do we have?
That's a loaded question. That's a loaded question.
Well, I think you kind of touched on it at the beginning. There's a lot of internet trappers. There's a lot of people that are either posing with their other people's catches, or they're not actually trapped. I mean, I don't know why. It's just become a thing in the last few years. A lot of, you see that in the hunting world too. So that's frustrating because these people are trying to promote trapping in the spotlight, but they're not trapper ed instructors. They're not taking kids out. It's just all for self-promotion. So that's bothersome. But also it comes from a lot of the hunting community, those same regurgitated myths like breaking bones, and that's so inhumane. And why do you pose with a picture? It's being tortured and suffering. And I'm like, no. I can take 30 seconds or a minute to take a picture and record a video because the animal isn't suffering. It's comfortable, and it's, you know what I mean? So just trying to re-educate the good old boys club that this isn't how it used to be. We're in a different age now. So if you hide everything on the internet, they're still going to conjure up their own, media. And so why not show the truth? I guess is what I'm looking at.
What about, let me steer that same topic another way. Do you get criticized more from men, a good old boys club, or women when they see you online?
Definitely men. Yeah.
And why is that? Because you're a woman and you're a trapper?
Well, like 90% of the trapping community is male. So I don't know if it's a fair comparison, because if we had 80% women, would they be given the feedback? It's really it's very skewed to say, but women are usually more, I guess, trusting of the content I'm putting out. They're taking my word for it. Whereas I feel like sometimes men, the feedback will be, oh, she weakened those springs. That's not true. Or she edited the video out with the parts of blah, blah, blah. And it's just sort of a lot of like mistrust for some reason. So it's hard to say.
Sure. And then what about, I see it a lot in the deer hunting end of things. And over the years, we've been doing this for so long. Actually, I was here before the internet was even around. So, I mean, I've seen the whole progression. But in the deer hunting realm, we've seen it. A lot of Johnny and Janie come latelys. Yay, I'm going to be an outdoorsman. I'm going to be a hunter. And, there's either a young girl or a buff guy posing with a deer. And it's like, I know they've never hunted, or if they did kill it, great, good for them. But do you see that a lot in this area as well with trapping? Do you see a lot of people like, hey, that's an opportunity where I can, carve my niche?
Oh yeah, definitely. I won't name any names. I mean, I fell into it years ago. When I was in college, I was signing up for every pro staff thing and trying to get my name out there. It's just it's funny. There's even a lot in the hunting community that they'll you start noticing there's a lot of like product pictures, but I don't see any actual harvesting
Yeah.
of animals
A lot
going on.
a lot of selfies in tree stands on the deer end, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of trap line pictures, and so they're out there. I mean, that's great, but I mean, I shouldn't say catching is what it's all about, but it kind of is. Like, when I go out shed hunting and I don't find anything, and someone will say, "Well, it's just good to be out there," and it's like, no, I'm not. I don't know. I want to find something, or I want to catch something, or I want to kill something. Like, that's why I'm out there. I'm not going to be the kind that says it's just nice to be out here, or what is it, like a bad day of hunting is better than a good day at work, or no.
You're like quoting me from the tree stand. I'm looking at my producers here. I did a bit on that last year when we were in Nebraska. So I say, oh, that's why they call it. No, I wanted to kill that deer. It was right in front of me. I'm not happy. I'm not happy that I had the experience. I wanted him dead on the ground. It's pretty much it's pretty much the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I get real frustrated because I'm a good trapper. I'm not. That's not an arrogant thing. I'm just my personality, even in my personal life or like I have a good attention to detail, and I'm very stubborn and motivated, and that's qualities that make you a good trapper. Paying attention to every leaf flipped over, whatever. But when it comes to deer hunting, I'm like the world's worst deer hunter because I hate sitting in a tree stand. I just like get so bored, and it's like I overthink things that I seem to always pick the wrong tree stand, or I screwed up on a deer like 4 times this fall. I don't know. It's frustrating to be a good trapper, and I'm a terrible deer hunter.
Well, I see that in your bio. You say you're a wannabe deer hunter, but I think I would disagree because I've seen some of the deer that you've killed. You've killed some nice bucks. Why do you, I mean, I know that impatience probably plays a part of it, but also is it a part, because I know there's not a ton of guys. I know of several guys that are just really good trappers, and they're the best deer hunters I know. And is that part of it because you're overthinking it, because you know that in your mind you're learning so much more on that trap line about not just critter behavior, but deer behavior too? I mean, you think that might be some of it?
Possibly. I can't tell you the number of times during the rut that it'll be like 8:30 in the morning, and I'm so eager to check my traps that I get down.
Okay.
I wonder what's going on in my trap, So I mean, a lot of it is not putting in the time. And I'll just like list all my excuses. As another excuse is I don't have a lot of practice. We don't have doe tags in my area, and so it's like,
dang, come here, we've got tens of thousands of them.
Yeah, you get like one deer, you get your buck tag, and you usually, so it's like the first time you're letting an arrow go is at that big buck. You don't, it'd be nice if I could kill a couple does early season and like get the kinks out. So that's something I always complain about too. But no, I don't know. I think the nerves just get to me. I don't have a buck mounted on my wall. I have all these little ones, but this is my year, Dan. This is it.
This is the year you're going to knock down a big one. Do you think you've become a better deer hunter by being a trapper? Oh, you have to say yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a better trapper because I was a deer hunter, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Like it definitely goes in hand, but if you're a good deer hunter, I think you'll be a good trapper too, because it's just all knowing everything about animal behavior, where they bed, where they eat.
Scent control is a big one for me.
Yeah, a coyote pee post is the same as a deer's scrape line, So I mean, it's kind of all the same stuff. So I think you can be good at both.
Okay. All right. I have another question for you. I've got a couple questions for you. The other thing on your bio, why are you is it the Barefoot Trapper?
Oh, yeah.
Where did you get that? Where did that come from?
I've always been barefoot growing up, and I think nearly everyone in Neilsville probably is barefoot. Like it's not a big deal here, but yeah, when I got on the internet and people started seeing pictures and video that I'm barefoot, usually like 40 degrees is my cutoff. So, I'm usually barefoot.
You're checking traps. October. You're checking traps barefooted.
Yeah, like as long as there's no snow on the ground.
Wow.
Yeah, dang. And it was for no reason. I mean, I can stalk deer and turkeys, and I can really, get close. You know, I've killed a lot of turkeys and I attribute it to being barefoot because I could sneak so easily, but there's no reason for it. It's just how I've always lived my life, and it kind of became a thing on the internet. So,
Well, that's pretty good. I missed it, so I guess I'll have to. You must have feet of leather if you're checking if you're
yeah, I do.
checking
I
traps.
do. Yeah, I went elk hunting out in Colorado, and they all said you can't be barefoot out here. And I went through the Rocky Mountains just fine. So yeah, it's really there's no thorns or anything penetrating my feet. So
We have to introduce her to Brad. Brad, our president, he went elk hunting in Crocs last year. So, but
there you go.
that's because he had a blister on his foot. So that's a story for another day. Okay, I know you didn't want to talk about this, but we're gonna talk about it. Let's talk about wolves. I'm not giving you my opinion. You probably know it, but you tell me about not just in Wisconsin, but the wolf situation in general in North America. Are wolves endangered? Should wolves be hunted and trapped, and why?
Um, to me, a wolf is no different than a coyote or a fox, right? They're all kind of the same. I think we honestly have the same number of bobcats that we do wolves here. And I don't want them eliminated, but I want the emotion and politics taken out of it. Cause like I said, they're no different than a coyote. Like why is one on a pedestal and one is, we can kill them without a license year round. I just don't get it. And it's a renewable resource. I mean, a wolf pelt is a valuable resource that we're doing it a disservice to Mother Nature by not utilizing it, just like any other fur bear. So, it's a frustrating thing.
It is a frustrating thing, and I'm old enough to remember. I'm sure people, if you haven't seen it, please check it out at deeranddeerhunting.com. I've written a blog on it, and I'm just going to give you my 2 cents. Is that wolves are not endangered. There's 60,000 of them in North America. Most of those are in Canada, obviously, but we have them here. We have them in Minnesota. We have them in Michigan. They're starting to go west in Idaho and places like that. The problem with the wolf is an apex predator. It needs to be managed, and it needs to be managed properly. And in Wisconsin, especially, our deal with the feds was 250 wolves, and then all of a sudden that creeped up to 350 to 550 to 750. Now it's like, well, I don't know how many we actually have out there. And in your opinion, or in your experience, I should say, how hard is it to trap a wolf? I know you've caught some. Those I'm assuming were on accident, but how smart are they compared to a coyote?
Oh, not at all. They're just a big dumb moose-like thing. It's like a moose compared to a whitetail or something. Like, well, I don't know if it's because they haven't been pursued by humans they're just have maybe like a tinge of arrogance or something that they're not shy, they're bold, they go up to anything, maybe because they are apex. They're very easy to catch, and I've purposely tried to avoid them in every tactic I can, and they still get caught. So I mean, there is no avoidance technique for them. If they're in the area, you'll catch them, and you can catch them on bait, on urine, on anything, dog food. Like it just doesn't matter what you use, they're gonna check it out. They're very easy to catch. So yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of like anecdotal story like that I can't prove, or it goes against the statistics, but just living around here, I mean, I have so many that I wish could be, every time I catch a wolf, it's not recorded anywhere. The first few I called and said, do you want to come collar this? Do you want to record? No, just let it loose. I'm like, well, I don't know how to help show how many we have then if nobody cares.
How many do you think you've caught over the years?
Oh, I've only caught 5, I think. I think I caught 1, and then I caught 4 in 1 year. So 5. I've missed a lot, like where their tracks were there, but I've actually caught just 5.
But that's 5 in one little area of one county. So that should give you an example of, I know you're in western Wisconsin, a little bit northwestern Wisconsin. And we have them here, and we're probably 250 miles from you. So I know that we've got there's wolves everywhere around here, and I know they're in other places. I'm not going to go there. I was going to say, everybody always points to Aldo Leopold, and they kind of wax poetic about Aldo Leopold, the fierce green fire, and when he shot that wolf and saw the life go out of its eyes. If you actually read Aldo Leopold, if he was here today, I would go toe to toe against anybody saying he would be the first in line to say we need to manage this population.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the good of the resource. It's not just for deer hunters. It's not just for sports people, men and women who loved outdoors. It's for that animal. I'm going to let that topic fade. And last topic I want to talk about is, again, related to trapping and fur, because I know that when I was growing up, when I was little, my brothers would trap. They'd get $50 for a fox pelt and $75 for a coyote, and it's like, I know those prices aren't there now. So what is the future of fur, and why would somebody want to trap when, like, you're not even going to get anything for it?
Well, so I mean, let's see. The fur auction of 2017, I was getting 125 per coyote pelt. So I mean, I know now with the way the world's going in 2022, the economy and whatnot, but just a few years ago, I was getting over 100. Now we've lost some of the fur markets, and just obviously the world is different in the last 2 years. So I've started tanning everything, and I just sew it into garments, because it doesn't really matter, like, the way the world goes. If you live in a cold weather state, fur is like, if you ice fish, if you tailgate, or just do anything outdoors, I mean, fur is what's going to keep you out there for the longest. There's nothing that compares to it. So I just get everything tanned, and I've just learned to sew them into garments for people, and it promotes wearing real fur. And I don't think there's anybody that's ever worn real fur and said, this isn't for me. Like, once you wear it and you feel the warmth and the softness and the connection to nature, you're hooked, so the more people that can see that, the better.
What about somebody who's first, like these people that you're educating, and they're getting into it, and it's like, listen, I'm not going to sell it. Is there an outlet where somebody could, like, if they don't want to utilize the fur themselves, can they sell it, or are there other things they can do with it?
Yeah, so I mean, tanning is where you would turn it into any kind of garment or wall hanger, so you can keep it forever. It would last a lifetime. There are different like fur agencies that will come around to your city with a truck, and you can sell it frozen, dried, different fur buyers and stuff. And unfortunately now NAFA closed down. That was the North American Fur Auction. But we still have Fur Harvesters. So that's the only auction house in North America that I know of that's big enough. But yeah, with the way fuel prices are going and stuff, I tanned everything this year. I didn't send anything to auction just because it's way too volatile right now. It used to be fun to watch the auction house and see it climb over $100, and you can hear people fighting, over it. But now you'd get $10 a pellet. It's not exciting. So you don't need to send it to auction. You can have it tanned right now, and that's kind of the best way to go. I sell everything on like eBay or locally, and people buy it because people love real fur. So you might have to put the money up front, but you will sell it easily.
Very cool. Okay, last question for you, Skye. A young person comes up to you, a 12-year-old girl, a 14-year-old boy. They say, I want to get into hunting, trapping, fishing. What is your response? If they don't have a mentor to take them, or they don't have a father or a mom or somebody who's into it, but they see that and they're interested.
Oh, well, if I can have them locally come with me, that's great. If I can figure out a way to get them to a trapper's ed class, definitely do that. If any kids go to like our summer rendezvous or our conventions, they will leave there with their arms full of weasel boxes and muskrat traps, because I mean, old timers love to give kids all these traps to get them started. Dog proof coon traps are great, because even a irresponsible kid, if they set it in the yard, they're not going to catch anything except for that coon. They're not going to hurt the neighbor's dog or anything like that. So we just give out so many like free traps, and all it takes is, I mean, even just setting a mouse trap in the basement they're hooked, and they want to go a little bit bigger, and then they want to, and then they keep going. So just give them lots of free stuff to get them started, and they'll be hooked on it.
And pretty soon they're barefoot and they're running through the swamp. Well, thank you, Skye, very much for joining us today. That was a wonderful conversation. I would like to have you back someday if you would
Sure.
join us. It's just refreshing to see somebody young, energetic, who's really embracing what could be described as old school tactics, which is very cool. Thank you again, Skye. Have a great day.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, that's the wrap for this week's Deer Talk Now podcast. Check it out wherever podcasts are downloaded, Apple, Podbeam, you name it. If you want to watch the video version, head on over to our YouTube page. That's YouTube.com/DDH Online, or you can check it out on Facebook or deeranddeerhunting.com. For Skye Goode, I'm Dan Schmidt. Thanks for joining us.